this meter needs to be removed, you have 72 hours.
Uh-huh.
And so it's important for people to take back the power from corrupt regulatory agencies and from utilities who are forcing these things. And just so people understand, I think this is a really important point, that the utility companies have been lying and saying that these meters put out a fraction of the electromagnetic fields that commonly used household devices do. The facts are, we were just in Felton, which is a mountain community in Santa Cruz Mountains, measuring smart meter emissions. We were in the middle of the street. We have an EMF analyzer, and the levels of radiation surpassed safety limits in Russia, Switzerland, and Italy. So
Wow.
if you were in those countries and you were getting that kind of reading, the levels of radiation, the levels of human exposure would actually be illegal. So these are very, very intense pulses. PG&E admitted to the Public Utilities Commission the other day that they emit up to 190,000 spikes of radiation every day. That the antenna power is more powerful than anyone ever knew. And so this is consistent with the kinds of health damage that's been reported. So
Right.
So even if you can't feel it, even if you're not getting symptoms from your smart meter, you're still being exposed to very high levels, and those high levels have been sensitizing people so that they can no longer be around cell phones or Wi-Fi or other sources of wireless in our environment, which obviously, needless to say, makes life incredibly difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. What about nationwide? Where are we? Because we know that PG&E has been incredibly aggressive with this. What about in other parts of the country?
Well, PG&E and the Southern California utilities are the furthest ahead with installation, but there is some form of smart grid programs being installed basically in most of the states and abroad as well. But there's been kickback, and we have active groups fighting smart meter installations in 30 U.S. states at the moment. That's growing daily. There's a backlash going on that's growing. The Nevada Public Utilities Commission launched a investigation into the health effects of smart meters just about a week or two ago. The Maine Public Utilities Commission has granted people an opt-out, but they have to pay more for it, unfortunately, which we consider to be, extortion, saying, you can protect your health, but at a price.
Mm-hmm.
And we keep getting inquiries from various areas. Oklahoma, Georgia, they're installing very heavily in Florida at the moment. And what's disturbing about it is that people receive very little notification. When there's any sort of resistance or organized resistance, typically the police come. And we've heard reports of police, working with installation companies to force smart meters on people's homes.
Wow.
We've heard reports in Santa Cruz and in parts of Texas where installers have actually committed assault onto homeowners who are trying to stop them from installing.
Mm-hmm.
There's been cases of property damage. A man's dog was tasered in Marin County. So whatever's going on, I think it's definitely very brutal, and there's definitely more to this program than would than is really appears on the surface. I think that there's a lot of other motivations that the utility companies may not be telling us about why these meters are being installed right now.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Have you looked into this company Light Squared by any chance?
Yeah, my understanding is that this is a company who has launched a satellite into space, into orbit, and their goal is to provide 99% of the Earth's surface with internet access and wireless internet access from space. And there's some speculation. I don't if you remember this, but I think it was about a year ago when all these reports of entire flocks of birds dying and fish washing up, and there was just a whole bunch of incidents like that.
Yeah.
And there was some speculation. I don't think that there's any proof, but there was some speculation that during the ramp up of the Light Squared satellite and during the calibration of its instruments, they may have sent levels of EMFs into the environment that resulted in the deaths of wildlife. And so that it's disturbing to say the least that you have a growing population of electrosensitive people who are increasingly on the run from this technology. I mean, we know dozens and dozens of people who are living in their cars, who have been forced to live in the forest, and these are just ordinary people like you and I. And the idea that when you look on the Verizon map, you see the coverage areas and all the parts that are going red with coverage. And there's increasingly very few places that don't have coverage where people could live safely. And so the idea that having a satellite up there to shower electromagnetic fields all over the planet with virtually no environmental review, despite all the evidence that it's harming humans, plants, animals, that we're really surpassing natural limits with this technology, it's incredibly disturbing. And what makes it even more disturbing is that the mainstream of society refuses to admit that there's a problem and that it's invisible. And I think, with carbon dioxide, with electromagnetic fields, the biggest threats to our environment and human health are, in fact, invisible. So we need to be aware of that.
Right. Is there a connection between light squared and smart meters?
Not to my knowledge, but I don't know enough about the project. There are others who are more familiar with it. But I mean, the only connection being that it's another source of electromagnetic fields in an increasingly thickening blanket of electrosmog that's affecting us.
Right. What about IntelliStreets? Do you know about IntelliStreets as well?
I don't. No.
You may want to look up IntelliStreets. They just launched this in I believe it's Flint, Michigan, of all places, where of course there's the cratering of the local economy. It has been since the 70s when Detroit left. When General Motors left Flint. They've launched this program there. It's essentially what it is, Josh. It's like smart meters on streetlights, and they have these transmitters, these two-way transmitters, RFID transmitters, that act as like little radio stations, just like the smart meters do, except they also have cameras on the streetlights. And they're able to relay information, and they're also able to control the time. There's a lot of real-time information they're grabbing. It's not just video. They're probably grabbing audio, but again, it's a wireless network that they're setting up on streetlights. So it's called IntelliStreets. You may want to look at that. That might be something of interest to you.
Well, yeah, I think it's just one more example of where we're rolling out devices using wireless technology with the assumption that they're safe if they're under FCC limits. And I think that assumption no longer holds water. It is not consistent with the research. And I think people need to be very concerned and aware that in this time of increasing public dissatisfaction with the government and basically, open rebellion through the Occupy movement, that we're seeing more and more means for the government to monitor our activities. There are these new radar detectors, new wireless detectors at most on and off ramps on the freeway now that can register with RFID tags on your automobile and have data on where you're going, who's going where, what vehicle is moving. The smart meter can, when it's installed on your home, can detect what appliances you're using and how often, and when you go to bed, and when you're away on vacation. And when combined with the home area network that the appliance manufacturers and the utility companies want to install, you have a situation where what you eat and what you take out of your refrigerator is data that can be transmitted back to the utility and sold to marketing firms. So, the invasion of privacy is staggering, and the potential for abuse of the system of increasing monitoring and RFID tags and CCTV cameras in public places. It's really something that is going to get a lot worse unless we organize to put a stop to it.
So what do you say, Josh, if people say, oh, this guy's a global warming wacko, obviously, we're not gonna buy into this. He's got an eco agenda, green agenda. What do you say to somebody who just would summarily shut down this kind of dialogue, summarily just shut it down when they begin to hear things like this?
Well, I mean, I think that we found a tremendous amount of common ground amongst people with various political positions through the fight against smart meters. There's no doubt that there's groups of people who think that the climate change is a myth. There's groups of people who think that it's a major problem and we need to address it. But where we found common ground is saying, look, okay, it hardly even matters at the end of the day. What matters is that the system that is running this whole thing, that is making the decisions to put in the smart grid, making the decisions to put GMO food and to put corporate profits above health and safety, needs to be fundamentally changed, and that there is most definitely, most everyone can agree on this, that there are corporations and vested interests actively at work trying to put forth solutions to climate change that will not reduce pollution or will not improve environmental or human health, but will fatten their bottom line. And
right.
those are the false solutions that we can all unite against and fight. And I think some of those false solutions are the smart grid, because adding wireless to an already unsustainable and harmful grid is only going to make it worse. Carbon offsets, which is like indulgences from the Middle Ages, saying that you can get someone else to absorb and to reduce their carbon dioxide, so you don't have to. The idea that we can continue our single occupant vehicle based transportation system, but just change the source of electricity, the source of power to electricity, through electric cars, is a complete fantasy. I think that there's certainly some very difficult discussions and decisions that need to take place, given the limits of the natural world and the fact that we're pressing up against them. And I think whether you're a Republican or whether you're a Tea Party, whether you're a Green Party, people are pissed off that corporate power is, abusing people and basically selling their health and their environment and the things that we'll need to survive on this planet, selling them off for money. And what is money?
Right.
It's pretty insane.
Well, so I think the ideological convergence is a really interesting dynamic, because on the one hand, let's say you're a Tea Partier, right? And you're willing to set your ideology aside for a moment because you're focusing on this one thing, which is invasive. And one of the things that we know about Tea Party people or people that are constitutionalists is that they're very into property rights and private property and being able to own property, right? This is a fundamental cornerstone for their belief system. On the other hand, you have, and I've seen this with, kind of on the far reaches of what I call the progressive green philosophies, is that property rights become superseded by environmental rights. That you have groups like, the UN, for instance, in accordance with Agenda 21, ICLEI, and a lot of sort of local mandating that, and in fact, the first guest, Dr. Valentine, began to touch on it a little bit, which is the reforestation or the rewilding of the United States, but at the expense of property rights. The property rights are now a luxury in an environment where we're experiencing quote unquote eco crisis. So now you've got these two kind of polarized points of view who set aside their ideologies for just a moment to tackle this one thing, right? Which is that they agree upon this invasive hold that smart meters and the ingress and privacy and all that stuff has on our lives. So let's say, for instance, we can get there, work on this. Now what comes out of that? Can these two parties kind of find other common ground to work on, or are the two ideologies outside of this one agenda item? Are they too polarized or disparate to continue to work towards some sort of a sustainable future where we have property rights and at the same time we're thinking about how we can sustain our environment on a more long-term basis. What's your take on that?